Take him in. Let's go. You don't have the authority to arrest U.S. citizens. Sir, you don't have the authority to arrest U.S. citizens.
Here's the thing about power. The more it hides behind body armor and suits, the more afraid it is of being questioned. So when federal agents in ski masks arrest an elected official, no badge, no warrant, no rights, that's not law enforcement. That's fear in uniform. Welcome to America, where ICE doesn't knock, it grabs. In this video, we're asking what the hell just happened outside the courtroom, and we're going to be making some historical comparisons.
Heil Hitler.
This is Brad Lander. He's a New York City comptroller. Basically, he's part of the mayor's office and he's in charge of finances and accounting. And he was elected into position in 2021. He's been deeply concerned with what's been going on with migrants being removed from the US, and he's been turning up at New York courthouses to keep an eye on proceedings to make sure that due process is taking place. He's also running for mayor of New York. So what happened? Brad had just met Edgardo, a longtime New York resident and father of two, who had just finished an immigration hearing at the Manhattan courthouse. As he exited the building, ICE agents in tactical gear surrounded him. Lander, who was escorting Edgardo as a show of support and oversight, asked to see a judicial warrant and refused to let go of Edgardo until it was shown. A basic constitutional right. But instead of producing one, the agents arrested both men, suggesting that Brad had been resisting arrest. But no warrant, no ID, no Miranda rights, just force. Edgardo was taken to federal custody. Lander was released hours later after the damage was already done. So I'm just going to play what happened in full.
You don't have a judicial warrant.
Keep going. Push us back up. Sorry, back up. I'm gonna make this difficult. Sorry. Back up. Just back up. Let's not cause any problems.
I will let go when you show me the judicial warrant. Where is it?
Sir,
where is the warrant?
I have it in my hand here.
I would like to see the warrant. I would like to see the warrant, and then I will let go. I would like to see the warrant, and then I will let go. Take him in. 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 Let's go. You don't have the authority to arrest U.S. citizens. Sir, you don't have the authority to arrest U.S. citizens. You don't have the, I'm not obstructing, I'm standing right here in the hallway. I asked to see the judicial warrant. By asking for a judicial warrant, you don't have the authority to arrest U.S. citizens asking for a judicial warrant.
Stay back. We go too. Sorry. No way. I'm safe. Where are you taking him? Hello?
Since you have no authority to arrest U.S. citizens, where are you taking me? And with what authority?
Why are you arresting me?
With what authority?
What you've just seen here is so dangerous. It's unbelievable, and people just sat around not doing anything, and there is a reason for that. You can't just arrest the ICE officers because they don't produce warrants, but the ICE officers also can't just arrest people, American citizens, without warrants. So we're in this very strange situation where both sides can't do anything, and yet one side is clearly breaking the law. Let's briefly go to the American Constitution. The first 10 changes to it were known as the Bill of Rights, and their changes are also known as amendments. So, within those first 10 are key rights that include protection from torture, the right to a fair trial, protection from unreasonable searches, protection of private property, right to a speedy trial, protection from self-incrimination. Essentially, all the things you would expect to see within the beginnings of being arrested, all the way to what your punishment will be if you're found guilty. So here's a rundown. Essentially, you think a crime has been committed. You go to a judge, you present the facts, and they issue a thing called a warrant for your arrest. They can issue a bail, which is essentially money to make sure you don't run away, or they put you in jail. And in the meantime, you're offered an expert in law who's there to try and defend you. You then have your day or week in court, and either you go to prison, or, like Mr. Lander, you're released. That is what is known as due process, and it's written into the American Constitution. Now have a listen to what Brad Lander had to say.
I'm New York City Controller Brad Lander, and I'm happy to report I am just fine. I lost a button. I'm gonna sleep in my bed tonight, safe with my family. I'm grateful to hear that the charges are not being brought, but if they are, I've got a lawyer. I don't have to worry about my due process rights. At that elevator, I was separated from someone named Edgardo, who I had just met a couple of minutes earlier. Edgardo is in ICE detention, and he's not gonna sleep in his bed tonight. So far as I know, he has no lawyer. He has been stripped of his due process rights by a government and a judge that owe him a credible fear hearing before they deport him.
But that's not how ICE agents work. They get their warrants from other ICE agents, not signed by an independent judge who looks at the facts and has been trained, just by another ICE agent. And their justification is that the people that they're deporting aren't American citizens. But if you don't go through due process, how do you know they're not American citizens or refugees? And if you watch the video again, you'll see that there's no ID on any of these officers. There's no way of telling who they are or what they're doing there. For all you know, they could be just random people who've dressed up as ICE and started kidnapping people off the street. But of course, they go too far and they actually arrest an American citizen, which they're legally not allowed to do. But even weirder, even though what they're doing is clearly illegal, the American citizen isn't allowed to resist arrest either. But there is something you can do, and I'll bring it up at the end of the video.
Heil Hitler.
Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition!
But the founding fathers did, and that's why they wrote the American Constitution. These clips make it sound and look absurd, it's supposed to, because it's fiction. But unchecked power looks ridiculous, but in real life it's also deadly. The Stasi in Germany in the 1960s to the 1990s, they detained without charge. You had no right to a lawyer, no right to resist. And fear was the currency. The knock at the door was everything. Or there was America in the 1940s and 50s under McCarthyism. That was the chasing of communists.
Any man who protects communists is not fit to wear that uniform.
You can't convict people by rumor and hearsay and innuendo.
Are my children going to be asked who denounce me? Are they going to be judged on what their father was labeled? I see a chain reaction that has no end.
Charges were in a sealed envelope. Nobody saw them.
Wouldn't you guess that the people who have seen the contents of that envelope might have a better idea of what makes someone a danger to his country? Or do you think it should just be you that decides?
Who are the people? Are they elected? Are they appointed? Is it you?
Do any of those comments that you just heard from McCarthyism and the McCarthy trials and Americans ring any bells with what you just heard here? It should do. It should be ringing an alarm bell.
McCarthy hurled allegations that well-known authors, activists, and government officials were actually traitors and communist sympathizers. This was known as red baiting and often consisted of McCarthy hurling allegations of suspected communist involvement and forcing people to respond and to defend their innocence, even though they had not been proven guilty.
Does that ring any bells? Because he's attacking the poorest in society, the weakest in society, in order to create a culture war.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in, they're eating the cats, they're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country.
What Trump is doing is stirring up fear, and as a result, it's giving him credibility to then authorize agencies to act without any constitutional oversight. And to be clear, this isn't the first American citizen to be arrested by ICE. In fact, between 2012 and 2018, ICE wrongfully detained 1,480 US citizens for several months, or even years in some cases, many ending with deportation with no apology. Since 2008, over 834 Americans have also had ICE detainers mistakenly logged against them, and here's the kicker. ICE doesn't need judicial warrants, only administrative warrants, signed internally not by courts, but by ICE agents. They're not required to read you your Miranda rights, even though that's in the US Constitution, nor even to verify your identity before hauling you off. That's not due process, that's a system built on plausible deniability an unchecked power. And considering America is founded on illegal immigration, where the people turned up and committed heinous crimes against humanity, I feel it absolutely ironic that they're taking such a strong stance and are willing to throw other Americans out of the country. So let's be clear what we've just seen. A federal agency wearing tactical gear and no ID operating without a judge-signed warrant arrested a US citizen for asking to see a legal document. That's not a technical error, that's not a one-off, that's what happens when fear becomes policy. ICE wasn't created to protect you, it was created to give political cover to fear, to manufacture a crisis where there is none. That's why it's always targeting the vulnerable. That's why it's armed like the military and yet exempt from basic rules of accountability. And if you think this is just an American problem, think again. In the UK, we've got our own version of this happening right now. We had the Rwanda scheme, and many of those parties want to try and bring it back. We've got asylum seekers demonised by tabloid front pages, and we've got politicians, some of them backed by reform, some in the Conservative Party, who are itching to create their own ICE right here in the UK. Now, I did say I had a legal suggestion, and I am not a lawyer. However, I think this may very well work. I appreciate also that when this is taking place, it is also very difficult to deal with, and it's not always possible. But if I was any American at that point of being kidnapped by anyone from ICE, I would look to call the police immediately and tell them you don't know who these men are and you are currently being kidnapped. It will force the police to take action and find out who you are and what is going on. And it will bring police and federal authorities into direct confrontation with ICE arresting American citizens. And for those of you in the UK and the rest of the world, I do issue this warning. First they came for the migrants, and I was told they were a threat, so I stayed silent. And then they came for the LGBTQ+ flags, and I was told it was about patriotism, so I looked away. Then they came for protest rights, and I was told it was keeping order, so I didn't speak up. Then they came for the poor, and I was told they just needed to work harder, so I scrolled on. Then they came for the truth, and there was no one left to speak it. Only lies, proudly wrapped in flags. They say if you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to fear. But when the ones in power don't wear badges, don't show warrants, and don't follow the law, maybe they're the ones who've got something to hide, and the rest of us, we better start being afraid, or start fighting back. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments. Once again, I'd like to say a big thank you to all of my Patreon and YouTube subscribers. You really keep this channel going and growing in these tough times. If you'd like to help out the channel, there is a link in the description. You could even buy me a coffee. Once again, thanks for listening. Bye for now.